Today we're going to be speaking about contingencies when you buy and sell property, specifically on the buy side, but it does involve the seller as well. And we can all chime in. It affects all the way we do business. So, Leslie, you want to start?
Sure.
You can start.
Certainly the biggest thing that involves all of us is a mortgage contingency. That's really the big decision maker with a contract. It basically says that you have a certain amount of time to secure a mortgage. That means congratulations, you're approved. And, usually there's some minimal conditions, like a commitment that has 30 conditions that you have to pay off your student loans. You have to pay off credit cards. That's not really a real true commitment that we can rely on. So we need professionals like you, Maria, who can, sort of decipher and understand that. Commitments are always subject to an appraisal coming back at a certain value so that you could borrow X amount of money. But that's like our biggest concern. So the appraisal contingency is built into the mortgage contingency.
Mortgage contingency. Right. I mean, I have seen sometimes I will see them separate,
yes,
right? Like where they'll have a financing and an appraisal. But I always tell folks, like, look, you want to get a mortgage or a financing contingency if you can, right? That's always going to be the preferred thing. You have a certain number of days to produce that, and I always say, like, look, what we then provide to you, like what makes it, because I'm often asked, like, well, what's different between the pre-approval you did for me and, the loan commitment? And we're like, I'm like, the loan commitment is just that. It's the bank or the lender committing to lend you the money to buy this property. And all you need to do is clear whatever conditions that are on that. So as Michelle's alluding to, like, you want to see, my goal is always to have as few conditions on that initial commitment letter as possible. But I'll also tell folks, like, hey, right now we're, like, for instance, we're very fast in underwriting, and sometimes we're getting the commitments out before we even have the appraisal back. So I'll say, hey, you just got approved. This is not the commitment letter that this is not the commitment letter where you want to release your contingency. We need to wait for the appraisal to come back. Let's make sure that the value is there. But the first thing I do is look at what those remaining conditions are. And we say, okay, is there anything here that's problematic, right? And if there's nothing that's problematic, then it's congratulations. You can feel really great. You're getting this loan.
Right. I think also a lot of people today, in order to be competitive in their offers, will waive the appraisal, right? And they have to understand what that means. If it appraises low, then they may have to either renegotiate the price or come up with more money.
Bring more money.
Be able to back out of the deal. But by that time, there may be 3-4 weeks into the process, and they're more committed to the house. So they really have to understand what that means. In addition, some people, I often get it happened this week, right? Where people will put a cap on what they want their exposure to be on. If they waive the appraisal, they'll put a cap. So I think they have to understand what that means and the different scenarios involved with the putting a cap on how much the waiver will be.
And that generally makes it difficult. In fact, our deal that we had together,
we had to change it.
We had to change it. Didn't actually work.
Or sometimes I'll see, like, as a negotiating tactic, maybe the buyers will go in and say, I'll do, like a 15-day contingency. Because, like, Leslie, you're the one that's negotiating these, right? Like, what would tell the people that are, like, listening, like, what's in our market in New York and metro areas, what's the average contingency? Would you say 30 days?
Usually 30 days.
Right.
I mean, people try to sneak in 45, but 30 is the average. And I feel like
20.
Yes, I see 20, but I think it does. No one ever can make it in 20. That's the reality of it, because the appraiser takes 2 weeks to get out there. In a busy market, it's difficult to find appraisers who get out there. So you're looking at. I think 30 days is, like, really a realistic
standard.
number. Yeah. It's the standard. I mean, shorter I do see, and it can happen. I have one closing on Tuesday that we had like a 15-day, and it happened, but because
listen, I can tell you it can be, and most of my commitments come out well under 30 days. So and appraisers Actually, they are not as busy as certainly
Right.
as like when they were in the
Right.
pandemic. Though I do feel like they are turning around more quickly, right? Especially like on a single family home, we can get an appraisal back in a week. The condos and co-ops, because they have to go and get information from the managing
Right.
agent for the building, those tend to take a few, take a little bit
Long.
longer.
Right.
Um, um, and speaking of that, like condos and co-ops, what about what are you seeing, Michelle, like in terms of a building contingency, right? Like a project contingency, making sure, because I see some contracts like
Um,
have that language like templated in like the fine print. Not all
well,
contracts have that.
They updated the New York State standard form so that it's more incomprehensive now.
I
Right. So
think,
that
go ahead,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yeah. No, just because I want it to be clear to everybody. So let's say you had your mortgage contingency, you got your commitment, you released your contingency, right?
Right.
To the seller.
Right.
And then like at the end, maybe it was a new development, right? Because this is, I think, where it can happen most. And let's say like the lender cannot approve the building.
Well,
Are
that's a
it
problem. I think it happens also in co-ops. I think it's very important that when you start buying in a co-op or a condo, especially a co-op, you have to really make sure that that lender you're working with is is approved for that building. I will tell you, speaking about, you mentioned something else which reminded me of something that happened really about a month ago. It's been settled, but it was a co-op and the buyer was approved, but the buyers, although it was not contingent on the sale of her place, the person buying their property, that co-op, all of a sudden had a problem. When they did their due diligence, they found that there was a dog bite a year ago, and it almost blew up the entire deal. Even though there was, apparently it wasn't any legal issue. The co-op board was taking no responsibility, and they didn't have to. But it really put a red flag to the lending institution. I don't know which one it was, and they weren't going to lend. Thank God it worked out for everybody because it's been a really long process. So I think even in the end, you have like all these like contingencies that you can't even imagine,
right?
right? That could arise. I think aside from financing, when people are making an offer on a property, they also will do an inspection, right? And very often I tell everybody to inspect the property. It's subject to a home inspection, but often today people will say, but it's only for informational purposes. It's kind of like a ploy, right? I mean, what does it really mean? It just means you really shouldn't be renegotiating after the inspection. However, people do, but it's in the right.
That is for sure.
That's for sure. They kind of forget that they put those words in their offer. So that's another something that is contingent on a home inspection. Also, even in today's market, which is a good market, it's robust, you would say, right? In the suburbs more than the city, um, people have to. It's subject to the sale of their home, or it's subject to the sale, subject to them finding a new home, which you have to be aware then of the timing, right?
Right.
It becomes a domino effect if it's subject to the sale of their home, and if that home's a co-op, it's a real problem, right?
I have one like that right now where we're selling actually a condo and we're buying something else. And, it was a lot of back and forth for the parties to understand that. And I also have that in New Jersey going on as well.
Right.
And that one is a co-op in New York City. So, it's really, problematic because we're dependent on someone submitting their stuff to the board
Right.
within a certain time. And we're relying on this board who maybe meets once a month to
Right.
come back and
Right.
come back with the answer. So we had to build this into
Right.
the Jersey attorney review.
Right. Other
It's totally different.
contingencies that I see too, when people come for financing, these are a couple that I have right now, is, like let's say the seller has a tenant in
Right.
the property, right? So there might be something written into the contract where that the tenant needs to be out of the property on a certain month or date.
Right.
Other also, like, I've seen contingencies for like title related stuff, Michelle,
Right.
right? Like contingent upon them, getting this a CO, or clearing out
Right.
some violations that they already know, something like that.
That's in every single contract.
Yeah.
I mean, unless like you're waiving, everything under the sun, that's in
Right.
every single contract.
Right.
So, the radon, and then sometimes there's a radon contingency that, usually
That's legitimate.
you could
Yeah.
sign the contract and then within a certain amount of days do a radon test, a lead test. We see contingencies for those things.
Right.
Water lead test, a well test. Up north, we do that.
Right, the
and
seller
that's-
has
the
to
seller
do
has
that,
to
the
do
one-
that within 10 days of the contract signing.
So
Right.
it's complicated, all these little pieces, and depending on which town you're in, it really determines, some of the contingent or what's required. But in terms of if it's subject to the sale of the future, like of them of being able to find a home,
Right.
that could take months,
Right.
especially in today's market where the inventory is limited, although increasing.
Right.
It's definitely increasing, but it
How do
really
you
may depend on the bidding war. They may not get the
I
house
was
they want, so it could take
gonna say,
months.
are you even seeing that many that where the sellers are accepting that? Because I'm finding that, like, a lot of the clients that I'm working with that are looking for homes, they can barely win the offer
Right.
going non-contingent on the
Right.
financing, let alone contingent upon, oh, and by the way, I have to sell my home too.
Nobody, I mean,
Very
to
few
do
and
that,
far between.
Right.
Not in this market that we're in right
no,
now, right?
no,
Yeah. I
maybe
agree.
10 years ago,
Yeah.
2008, maybe, not now.
Yeah, I mean, lots of people are waiving their mortgage contingencies. I mean, they may not be able to pay 100% cash, but, and before signing a contract, everyone has to realize what that really
Yeah.
means. That means, you're bound upon signing,
Right.
unless someone can't clear title for some reason.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So that's kind of a scary concept, because if you're putting in a decent amount of money, $100,000 loss is
it's a
big
lot of
deal.
money.
Hey, listen,
Right.
it's a lot of stress on me as the person who's doing the financing. Like, I have a client right now. I mean, he won his deal, but he was like, look, I got to go in, no contingent, no inspection, no appraisal contingency. He's like, Maria, I'm getting this loan, right? And I'm like, yeah, like, as long as nothing else changes, right? Like, don't go
Right.
losing your job tomorrow or anything
Right.
like that, right?
Right.
Things that are
Yeah, but
outside of our
things
control.
could happen, right?
Yeah,
Maria, you
anything
never know.
can happen, right?
I think the other thing that people are doing, because they're so nervous about being able to find a home, they're waiving an inspection. And if anybody does that with us, they have to sign off that it was their decision, their idea. We did not encourage it at all.
Right.
Because, I mean, that's dangerous to do. Even
Right.
if you're
Right.
a contractor or a builder, or an architect, maybe you'll feel comfortable. But the
Right.
average person, I think it's very dangerous.
A house could look totally great,
Really.
and then you find all the little things that you wouldn't see by.
I mean, the reality is that even when you do the inspection, right? I mean, we've all done it, right? And then you get into the home, and you're still going to find some things that aren't
Well, they can't
working
go
the
into
way
the
that you
walls.
want them to be working, right?
Right.
You don't want to go into the money pit.
No,
Exactly.
no, at least have a baseline of what you can expect. I mean, look, at an inspection, they're not allowed to do a destructive inspection, so they can't open the walls. Are there termites behind? I mean, we don't know, but at least do your due diligence. Check the town, make sure there are no underground oil tanks. Know what you're buying. Have a
Right.
good sense of at least what you're going into. And people who waive these,
Right.
I think are making a big mistake. Would you say so? I mean, it's a big error. I would never do it.
Yeah, I always try to say, even if you just do it for your own purposes, you could
Right.
walk away if you didn't sign
Yeah.
anything. So.
I know. I mean, I think it just shows the desperate state of some of the real estate market in certain pockets, right? Where there's just so little inventory and people who are really looking for homes that they are willing to give up, like, what we all consider, like, this is just part of, but this is the largest transaction for most people that they're going to make in their lifetime. So
Right.
you would want to be as careful as possible, but people are having to like make offers on the fly, right? Like having to, like I hear the agents, talking to them like, look, you don't have time to think about this. If you think you like it, make an offer, because we've got, there's 50 people coming through on a Saturday and it's best and final by Sunday at noon. And it's really interesting times, that we're in, right? Because I think there's a whole, group of people out there that think, oh, there's really not a lot of activity going on in real estate because mortgage rates are higher, right? But that's really not the case. It's really, um,
Well,
um, it's like no other market that I've been in, and we've all been in the market for a very, very long time, right?
right. But I think I will say that I could tell you in the last week alone, the last few weeks, I think inventory is definitely up. I would say just looking at New Rochelle yesterday, 5 new homes came on.
Great.
Scarsdale, White Plains, and the Highlands, 3 new homes came on. So every few days, a few homes,
Yeah.
kind of settles down the market, especially if they're all in the same price point, right? Same area.
Yeah.
So that kind of settles it, and
That's good news.
hopefully,
Yeah.
it is good news. I think it is.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
the rates would come down, not that you have control.
Well, we are
Maureen,
having
but
a really strong morning this morning, so let's see how we open up. The rates have actually have been declining the last couple of days. A lot of people locked yesterday because we really thought, the all indications were that this jobs report was going to be good this morning. It did not. It came back under what was expected. So there is a bit of a rally going on. Rates aren't out yet, but they should be out in the next couple of minutes. So we will find out. But if that is a continuing trend, I think that will help as well.
okay, great. Well,
All
listen.
right.
Sounds great.
All right. If anybody have any questions, please call us, email us.
DM
and if
us.
not, we look forward to seeing you next Friday.
All right. Sounds great. Everybody have a great weekend. Bye-bye.